All over the world, if you're given a choice between playing games, partying, or watching short comedy videos on one hand, and studying, reading books, or working towards your goals on the other, what's the reason that almost everyone always pick the first option? We all know deep down that if you choose the second option, if you invest your time and energy into it, you could truly reach great heights in life. And yet people still gravitate toward the first option. So what's really going on here? Is there any way to escape the trap of instant gratification? The answer lies in dopamine. Our brains release neurotransmitters, one of which is dopamine. I won't bore you with chemical formulas, but just understand this. Every activity triggers a dopamine release, and some activities give you a massive surge while others give you only a trickle. Activities with uncertain outcomes, like gambling, getting social media notifications, or partying, tend to release a lot more dopamine. There was an experiment at the University of North Carolina where researchers attached an electrode to a rat's brain and linked it to its liver. Whenever the rat pressed on its liver, its brain released a surge of dopamine. The rats ended up spending their entire day just pressing their liver, abandoning food, water, and even movement. Once the electrode was removed, they stopped the behavior entirely. Their energy was completely drained. The same phenomenon happens with us. When we engage in high dopamine activities, we tend to ignore those that release less dopamine, no matter how important they might be. And what counts as a high dopamine activity can differ from person to person. Yet activities like gaming, social media, partying, and gambling are universal. Their uncertain outcomes trigger a huge dopamine rush. For a scientist, that rush might come from studying or researching all day. For an alcoholic, it might be drinking or partying. This is why it becomes so hard to break away from these habits. As soon as your day starts, you're forced to make countless decisions, and dopamine plays a major role in influencing those choices. Throughout the day, you constantly switch between high dopamine and low dopamine activity. Once you've indulged in something high in dopamine, anything low in dopamine becomes incredibly boring. Unless there's something extremely urgent, you'll avoid those low dopamine tasks. That's why during exam periods, you're told to avoid distractions like TV, games, or goofing off. If you've spent 5 or 6 hours gaming or partying, it's nearly impossible to focus on your studies right afterward. Even on a Sunday night, people who party or drink find that even small tasks become tedious the next day. Big brands have figured this out too. They design their product to trigger a dopamine rush, making you use them habitually. In one experiment, when rats were given their favorite treat, their dopamine levels spiked. But when given the same treat repeatedly over a week, the dopamine response dropped. Your brain becomes less reactive to something over time. It's like needing another spoonful of coffee after a while. That's why major brands constantly tweak their products to keep your interest alive. Everywhere you go, from malls to your favorite apps, you're bombarded with games, quizzes, and buy one, get one free offers, all designed to trigger that dopamine hit. So, what's the solution to this dopamine trap? It's actually quite simple. Observe yourself for a day, and you'll discover which activities in your life provide a high dopamine rush and which ones are low on dopamine. Once you know that, realize that if you only stick to high dopamine activities, your life will eventually become unbearably dull. Instead, learn to balance them. Use high dopamine activities as a reward after you've completed your essential tasks. For instance, if you want to play games, first take care of all your important work. Then, as a reward for your discipline, enjoy that game. That's the key to breaking free from the dopamine trap and reclaiming control over your time and energy.